Welcome, everyone, to episode 27 of Behind the Shield podcast. It's our year in review show. I'm glad you showed up today for a 1 hour of cybersecurity discussions and stories from the year past. And we're even going to have a glimpse into our crystal ball to try to see what's ahead. I'm your host, Marco Estrella, and I'm very happy to be back behind the mic. We had a month off in December. And I hope everybody had some time to spend with families and friends during the holidays. On today's show, our team of panelists and I will be recapping an eventful 2024. And stay tuned until the end of the show when I ask the panel to give us their bold predictions for 2025. Of course, the most anticipated segment in podcasting today, the Hot Topics segment, will be back later on in the show. And also, to start off 2025 on the right foot, we have brought back one of our favorite guests from 2024, Tom Tovar, co-creator and CEO of Appdome. How's it going, Tom?
Going great. Happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for listening.
Happy New Year, Tom. So, Tom, just at the top of the show here, can you remind our listeners what Appdome does again, please?
Sure. We're AI native platform that codes defenses into mobile applications so brands and developers don't have to do that work. We're here to make it easy for the good guys.
We're the good guys. All right, great. Thanks. It's great to have you back. And you're participating in the panel with some cool hot topics of your own, so that's great. Nice to hear. And speaking of the panel, let me introduce my trusty cybersecurity expert sidekicks. And they are Patrick Naum, Virtual Guardian CEO.
Hi, everyone.
From our office in Minnesota, Bill Strew, President of Virtual Guardian's U.S. Operations.
How's it going today?
From the Snowy Mountains of West Virginia, Virtual Guardian's Senior Director, U.S. National Sales and Solution Architects, Jason Williams.
Hello. Happy New Year.
All right. How is everybody? Are you doing, you gentlemen doing good?
It's great. It's cold. It's snowy.
Keeping warm.
Living the dream.
Cold and snowy, keeping warm, living the dream. Okay, all right.
We have different perspectives, as you can see, right?
All right. Well, you'll notice that I didn't say a Happy New Year. Tom, however, did wish me a Happy New Year. I'm always on the fence about that statute of limitations about the Happy New Year. We are January 23rd. But I mean, it's still early enough that we can wish it, I guess.
All the way up to February 1st, in my opinion. You're good.
We're good till the end of the month? Okay, all right.
That's right.
Good until the last person takes down their Christmas tree.
Mine's still up.
No way. No way.
Mine's still up. Of course.
It's January 23rd, man.
There you go.
It just means I'm only 10 months away from the next Christmas. I'm good to
I
go.
was gonna say, do you ever put it away? That's the question.
You know what? And it'll dovetail in my subject today. Are you waiting for the Chinese New Year? Is that one what your deadline is?
No, I'm just waiting for
Coming
the
up.
next Christmas, which is in 10 months. So I'm a happy camper. I just want to be ahead of the game.
I'm with Jason. They dragged the Christmas tree out of my house.
Really?
I was kicking and screaming. We got to hold on to that thing. So yeah.
So Tom and Jason, you're the neighbors that the lights stay on year round, or what? The lights outside of the house?
Depends where you're at. You know, where I grew up, it's light for the other neighbors. So
Jason, you are the reason why there are Christmas shops that are open year round. So thank you for
it's a
that.
lovely thing.
There you go. There you go. Well, I'm glad to see everybody's in high spirits. Everybody seems to be very well recharged and rested. Good. So let's get into the hot topic segment. Let's dive right in. We have a couple of hot topics that are from 2024. Some of your, kind of favorite stories from the past year. And some of them are more recent. It's a little mix of everything. So let's start with you, Bill. You're up first. You went back to February 2024 for your first hot topic. Which one was it? Tell us about it.
It was the mother of all data breaches. It was the Change Health data breach. I'll say it's not my favorite story because I think I received at least 3, if not 4, breach notifications as a result of this particular data breach. But I wasn't alone. It impacted 1/3 of the U.S. for their medical records. So I was in good company. So everyone else out there who got a breach notification, welcome to the club.
I see.
But it was an interesting story from multiple perspectives. I think that The article that I chose to actually highlight is the 8 critical lessons learned from Change Healthcare's ransomware catastrophe. Sorry, something else
Catastrophe.
caught my mind there for a moment. Um, it cost United Health Group or Change over $1 billion in recovery efforts. Like I said already, it exposed 1/3 of U.S. citizens' data. But I think more than anything, and to the point of the article, it highlighted poor security controls. So they gave 8 recommendations that we should all take into consideration as we look at our cybersecurity programs. And the very first one is MFA is essential. The compromise itself happened because of compromised credentials in an unprotected Citrix portal that lacked MFA authentication. So it was a clear and easy path into Change Healthcare's environment. That was one of many items that came out of the report, but the second one was the systems themselves weren't segmented. So lack of segmentation allowed the attackers to continue to worm their way through that particular environment and continue to cause some havoc for everybody. Change Healthcare was relatively new to Optum or United Healthcare. They were acquired in 2022. So their third recommendation was M&A activities require due diligence. Make sure that you're doing everything that you possibly can, especially from a cybersecurity perspective, if you're in the world of M&A, and make sure that those systems are secure.
Mm-hmm.
Change Healthcare was also self-insured. So self-insure at your peril is recommendation number 4 or topic number 4 in the article. Foregoing cyber insurance would have definitely helped them out through the financial component of this particular breach. Number 5 on lessons learned was living with the enemy. The attackers remained undetected. This time it actually really wasn't that long by an industry standard perspective, but they were in there for 9 days before deploying the ransomware. So as far as dwell time, quite honestly, 9 days is not terribly long, but certainly was detectable and could have possibly been prevented if the right controls were in place. Right. Number 6, they called it double jeopardy. I think that this refers to paying the ransom. It's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situations. But they paid over $22 million in ransom to get their data back. And I know that there's been a lot of discussions as to whether A, should you ever pay the ransom? 2, what type of legal process should you go through if you should even be allowed to pay the ransom? Who should approve it and so on? But needless to say, by paying ransom, you're perpetuating the cycle of ransomware and providing encouragement for attackers to continue their activities.
Well, I think also that was the initial payout, right? So there were residuals that exceeded the 22.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm not sure if there was a secondary ransom as well. So that's very possible. That I don't have with me here. So lesson learned number 7, healthcare is increasingly under attack. And it's been under attack for years at this point, but the healthcare data breaches are particularly damaging due to their impact on patient care, sensitivity of data, and the types of data that is stored by a healthcare provider is perfect for anyone that wants to go under and steal identifications of anybody that's listening to this podcast today. So it's a target-rich environment for the attackers. And then the last critical lesson was ransomware remains a major threat, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So make sure that you're prepared properly with the other recommendations, specifically starting MFA, segmentation, due diligence, continuously test your environment. But even with all those types of activities in place, ransomware could be a threat to your environment. So continue to work with your cybersecurity professionals and figure out what we can do to help prevent ransomware.
Especially when they don't even have the basic, the MFA and the segmentation. I mean, at this point, 2025, these are kind of things that every enterprise should know. But then again,
I have a 12-character password.
Mind if I ask a question? Bill, it's good, one thing that I've been thinking about for 2025, and I might have to update my prediction, around it, and I'll ask you guys the question is, as CISOs, everyone seems to focus on creating, QRFs, quick reaction force, quick reaction capabilities.
Right.
You've got an exploit, you've got a compromise, you get down there, you identify it, you prioritize, respond, etc. But, there's these concepts out there that we don't talk about much, but maybe we need to bring into the center stage around threat management,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Gartner had a continuous threat exposure management.
Mm-hmm.
We do this kind of work in the cloud area, with security posture, defense posture management, things of this
Yep.
nature. But I wonder whether, in 2025, we're going to see, given everything that you've said, whether we're going to see the role of the CISO really kind of say, hey, look, your job is, threat management, continuous threat management. You need to mitigate and preempt attacks and look for things before they're taken advantage of. All the way back to SolarWinds, where, you've got like rampant configuration
Right.
problems
Right.
and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You don't get any credit anymore for stopping something bad if the thing that happens is a configuration solvable problem. In other words, so that threat exposure management, that threat management, I wonder, what do you think? Do you think that's going to become kind of center stage as these breaches happen and impact billions of dollars? I mean, an organization's got to put something different in place, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the short answer is yes. You talked about continuous threat assessments and so on. That should be a component of obviously the size of the company. So a CISO of a small company may be responsible for all of it. In large organizations, they should have really good red teams that are actually doing continuous testing of the environment for them. But it actually harkens back to one of the other conversations we had in 2024, which was the ever expanding role of the CISO and how much information or how much responsibility is actually being packed on his or her back as they continue to build their security program. It's not just the technical controls, it's physical controls and looking at regulations and so on. There is so much for the CISO to take note of that's hard to be effective in every single area where they have responsibility. And not every organization can afford to have specialists that are going to actually look at each component. So I wish there was a silver bullet here and say, just do this and you're good. But it's a very tough job and one that is getting tougher and has actually more accountability for the individual in that role because they're the ones signing off onto whether or not that organization is secure or not.
Right. I think we spoke about splitting the CISO's role in past episodes because it's starting to become very, very heavy for very, very heavy consequences for just one individual on their shoulders. Gentlemen, I got to move on to the next one. Let's thank you very much, Bill. Very interesting. Just remembering that a big, huge story that still has repercussions like more than a year later. Thank you for that. So we move on to Patrick. Patrick, you also have a headline from February 2024 as well. Remind us, please.
Yes, it was a fact sheet that was issued by the US government following collaboration with Western countries, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Canada, to identify the People's Republic of China. And it'll be a common theme you'll see today with some of my topics that were identified as the Volt Typhoon unit for servicing the PRC, which basically pre-positioned threats and pre-positioned the tools and the means to attack critical infrastructure in the US and allied countries. So this was discovered by collaboration. So if you look at the geopolitical implications, I think we still need to collaborate at least the Western countries together to root out these types of threats. And pre-position is essentially, and when you think about Russia and Ukraine and Russia and Georgia, that's kind of the tactics that these rogue states, if I could call them that way, use, is that they're pre-positioning assets in order to disrupt before, during an attack, or to obfuscate, if you will, or attract attention elsewhere from something else going on. In this
Mhm.
specific case, they used techniques called living off the land. So it wasn't necessarily exploiting malware or positioning, you know, threatening software. Is actually taking advantage, and it goes back to Tom's point in terms of assessing continuously, you know, the state of vulnerabilities, because living off the land is basically parking yourself as hackers or intruders in software and code that is typically non-malicious. It's just that it typically code that's not updated, whether it's an iOS, an OS, from a server or any workstation or any application for that matter. So it's pre-positioning. And typically, you know, when you're going to scan an environment, you're not going to detect actors that are living off the land. The way to circumvent that is making sure you're patched and upgraded at the same time, or that you have proper code reviews. So, you know, that was the big story for me, and it's following through to this year. Bill shared this morning one of the articles he was going to comment about is, as an example, the U.S. Treasury or ex-U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's computer was compromised by Chinese state-backed actors. And it was considered a major incident, not critical, but major. Apparently, it was not necessarily classified information, but they got to her. They got to the assets, and those are some that we know of. Typically, in these cases, there's a lot of assets that are compromised that we do not know of.
Right.
It's the kind of the tip of the iceberg, like was the case here. And it brings back, you know, if you look at the fact sheet, it talks about, you know, reminding organizations on best practices. Every single event that happens, and you know, it creates a situation where we need to remind organizations on best practices, like you guys went over today. I'm not going to go over those again because we did go through most of them so far. But yeah, I mean, I think living off the land techniques are sometimes underestimated. We're mostly looking for malware, but I think we need to look beyond that and make sure that we have proper third-party risk assessments, that we make sure to vet vendors, and make sure that, you know, as is the case with a lot of software, by default asks for privileged access to systems, data, and applications. So make sure that the least privileged access is enforced, which is part of the purview of a zero trust architecture when you deploy solutions, to avoid cases where living off the land could leverage privileged access from some software to compromise and encourage lateral movement. So that was a reminder, stark reminder from a year ago. And unfortunately, it's still top of mind today in all sorts of different other situations that we're going through.
Is your company digitally resilient? 75% of small businesses have no disaster recovery plan, and backup copies do not guarantee an organization's ability to get back to business. For more than 25 years, ESI Technologies has specialized in IT continuity, reducing financial and operational impacts for our clients. Learn more about digital resilience from ESI's experts at esitechnologies.com.
For those who want to read that PDF, the actual name of it is PRC State-Sponsored Cyber Activity, Actions for Critical Infrastructure Leaders. So Google that, you'll find that easily. And you're right, Patrick, it's still, just as Bill's hot topic, it's still valuable today. It's not like a news comes in and disappears. It lingers.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to Tom. Tom, let's revisit a topic from when you came to our show last year, from November 2024, concerning the use of deceptive AI. And boy, that exploded, right? What's your take? Can Face ID survive?
It's a good question. I think in the last 6 months, 6 to 9 months, we've just seen an absolute I think you coined the right word, explosion in kind of the evolution of deep fakes. I would say any vendor providing Face ID, whether it's Apple, Google, or any third-party vendor out there, is struggling with how to detect Face ID bypasses and deepfake attacks in facial recognition software. I think one of the things, and I think Patrick has a great point here, and I'll give a hint as to what we do to defend against these things, is living off the land attacks don't just happen in cloud systems and web systems. They can also happen, and they're not just nation state tactics. They're organized crime, hacker community tactics, etc., that can deploy something onto a device, mobile device, what have you, and leverage known systems and APIs and protocols on that device to bypass any these authentication systems. So while on the one hand, you have very sophisticated capabilities to recreate faces and facial gestures and spoof by liveness checks and things like that, which all of which is happening. And my last count is there's something like 33,000 different options of how to do this out in the world already. You still have to use mechanisms to get that image, that video, that stream into the authentication workflow. And so while there might be 30 plus or more thousands of different options to create, fake whatever, the methods and the mechanisms used to get that into an application or authentication flow are finite. And so if you can block the means of delivery, you can block the actual exploit itself. So living off the land attacks are, Sun Tzu says, don't attack your enemy's cities, attack their plans. So what we've done is we've looked at how we attack the delivery vehicle of that to stop it. But it's a scourge right now more viral than any COVID virus we saw in our physical lives. This thing has really, really blown up. I think it's become topic number one for lots of people in 2025.
Wow. Wow.
But I guess, so I use my fingerprints to unlock my phone. I guess that must be better than facial recognition.
No, there are definitely spoofs out there for fingerprinting, voice, use my voice as my password, voice cloning, facial ID. I think, all of the checks that, so people use what's called embeddings and other types of things to kind of put dots all over kind of what you expect a facial recognition to do. AI can replicate all of these things very easily now. So liveness checks, light sensitivity, focus in and out, all of those things that used to be kind of the holy grail of facial recognition are now kind of all at risk because of just how quickly AI has been able to kind of mimic all of these movements. Blinking, we used to say, oh, well, I'm going to track how random or how quick an eye blinks and, whether there's a pattern or not, because AI for like a week wasn't able to do what humans can do. And then a week later, that's gone. So I think this question of liveness and real is breaking down or has broken down pretty fast. And I think the world is kind of like still trying to wrap its head around, okay, how do I stop this within my own authentication workflows? Now, the good news is the attacker cannot do that at scale yet. So it's still a one-off attack or a limited number attack, because you have to connect a lot of systems together. You got to connect your phone to something, to something, to something, but that's going to go away as well. So I think we're going to really see in the next 3 to 6 months, a lot of people out there, that are relying on facial recognition to be the be all and end all of account protection and account identity and so forth. I think are really going to have a lot to contend with. And so we're obviously working with the community, working with vendors who provide those services to give our intelligence to them or to developers to help them know when these compromises are happening. But we're talking about this stuff real time, every day, every moment right now.
It changes so quickly. My goodness.
I was pontificating in November. And now I'm right in the middle of, it's like the forest fires out here we were talking about the threat levels high, and now we're in the middle of, calling in, tankers to grab water from the ocean and put fires out. I mean, we're
Yeah.
literally right in the middle of it now. It's happened that fast.
Well, I mean, I was listening to a podcast. It was Jordan Peterson and Mark Andreessen, the Netscape and Mosaic founder, and then he's a serial investor, and they were arguing that the compute capacity for AI is doubling every 15 weeks, and the energy consumption of AI has doubled over the last 2 years from 2% to 4% of GDP. Sorry, not GDP, of total energy consumption in North America. It's crazy.
Wow.
And this contributes to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing, and here's the really scary part that'll freak you out, is that to do a facial recognition AI deepfake, interestingly, does not take a lot of compute.
Wow.
And you can run it on your mobile phone, and it's not something that's gonna really burn up your CPU.
Well, no cost to hackers.
It's a low barrier, high impact. It's like a brand new missile in warfare. Like all of a sudden, cheap to produce with high precision, high impact.
A drone.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It's the military equivalent, cyber equivalent of a military drone. These facial recognition, bypass, deepfake,
Unbelievable.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom. We're going to move on to the next topic. Jason, you're up, and you wanted to do kind of something different, a little bit of a recap 2024 and dovetailing into 2025. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, to go back to Tom's, I still think just based on our last conversation last year, I'm walking around with a microwave and keeping everything in there, and it's protected. Okay, so we're still going to have the microwave theme. So the goal would be from Appdome to create a smaller microwave, portable.
I hear you.
So with that being said, no, to your point, Marco, when we start to look at 2024, it was definitely very interesting from a recap perspective of where the adversaries are taking us down the road, in all honesty. You look at the vulnerabilities and the breaches that occurred against the software component of your firewall infrastructure, the Palos, the Fortinets, etc. Not just a compromise, but also the ability to obfuscate and utilize the same syntax and the same extensions that the actual underlying firmware is using. So the ability to become resident, to be able to scale, be persistent, and be undetected for a while until an upgrade actually happens is very sophisticated. So we start to look at where companies are focusing based on what we were talking about in 2024. We had vulnerabilities coming against the firewall. So what's defense in depth look like? We've been leaning towards vendors that, or talking with folks about the vendors that have platforms. Well, what does actually a platform look like? Because if I have all those eggs in one basket, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should we go back to disparate technologies? What I have at the perimeter, I don't have in my internal, because I don't want the same vulnerability to hit my external and then give keys to the kingdom internally. So there's a lot of things that CISOs are weighing right now to protect their environments from a defense in depth because of the sophistication of the attackers and what they're able to do now. We look at where we were talking about data protection and governance and protection, excuse me. We talked about identity, and we talked about AI and automation, and how that's forming the next wave of discussion points on I'm working towards a data-driven posture, a data-driven security posture, in all honesty. How does that do risk mitigation from my identities and my users? But at the same time, like Tom talked about, you talk about CTEM, and then you look at the overall efficiencies of an organization. How do we get ahead of a threat? How do we get more proactive, more efficient, more resilient, recover at a moment's notice? So you're taking in a lot of the new things that are coming out. The Halcyons, the Armed Cybers, the AK Identities, the Sierras, the Appdomes, the Veronuses of the world, focusing on the core of that data to protect it. Then that risk mitigation and reduction from a user perspective, and then wrapping that with AI and automation to get more efficient for the organization, but to be able to be resilient and recover in a moment's notice. So we're starting to see that. But kind of all that's the way it's going. And we started to also talk about quantum. We had our first nation state quantum breach against encryption algorithm for Bitcoin utilizing D-Wave that was done by China. So now going into 2025, how do you stay ahead of the threat? How do you stay focused on that data footprint, both internal that you're creating, your intellectual property from that standpoint, as well as the data you're consuming from third party? How do you look at your identities now as that? We talked about it as being that perimeter, but it really is that perimeter now. And then how can you actually look at that AI and that automation footprint driving you further into 2025 with everything that's being focused towards AI, towards quantum? And then how do you do quantum protection now? And so you're starting to see the quantum protection pieces of discussion points coming out as you look at the trend, especially from Gartner in 2025. It's AI and it's post cryptography based on or post quantum cryptography. What does that even mean to a normal user? Because we haven't even ingested quantum computing yet. We are still on high performance computing clusters. So there's a lot of things that we talked about in 2024 that were the initial shockwave of, oh my goodness, look what's going on, or look at the extension of those types of breaches and attacks. And then also now, where are organizations focusing from a data identity and automation AI footprint, and then where 2025 is going with take everything we did in 2024, flip it on its head, and get more granular on what AI is going to look like, what quantum is going to look like, and what our client, our CISOs and our business leaders are going to be looking at from protecting data, protecting identities, and becoming more efficient and ahead of the game through AI and automation.
Wow. Things are moving pretty quickly, I gotta say. Wow.
We are ramping up quickly.
Ramping up a lot. Yeah, I even missed that the hack, the quantum hack. I missed that one. I didn't know it happened already. I think I mentioned on previous show that that my initial thoughts were like quantum's going to come in the 2030s, but it's
here.
It's here now. Anyway, thanks.
Well, and to that point, where organizations going to go with that, especially if you want to stay ahead of things, research arms, genome sequencing, cancer research, things like that. Open research arms, they're going to be using quantum because the high performance clusters can't handle it.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Thank you very much. Bill, back to you. Oh, sure, Tom. We'll go quickly. 15 seconds.
One real quick thing, which is I do agree with Jason. I think the rate of evolution change with AI, and in this case I'm talking purely about LLMs.
Right.
The pace of exploit evolution is mind blowing. I mean, I did an example in front of a group of CISOs at a CISO event where I created an exploit that could do a large scale credential stuffing against everybody's business in the room, all right, live, and just with some simple prompts and do this, and for educational purposes do that, and then make it do this and make it do that in front of a group full of people. And I said, okay, we spent 15 minutes creating the exploit. We're not going to run it. I want you all to think about it. And they were just like,
right. And how do you train your teams about that now? You look at awareness training. What does that even look like moving forward? Because it's not bad URLs and grammatical errors in emails and so forth. It is how you train on the context of these types of attacks. That's going to be very difficult as we move forward into 2025.
Yep, exactly. And the research about vulnerabilities into any system, when building this exploit, note any CVEs or other public exploits about boom.
So quick, quick.
Critical.
All right. Bill, you wanted, I feel like we're harping on China a lot, but I mean, my goodness.
Listen, we're not done with that.
And I know. I know. And, we're harping on them a lot, but these are the headlines. There was allegedly there was some malware that China has installed in the US.
There was malware. There was malware.
Okay.
It's not allegedly. In fact, it was a remote access Trojan.
Okay.
One that's been around for a long time, PlugX. But it's really not necessarily, I'm not going to harp on China. I'm just going to talk about something I've not seen before in this particular article. So the article basically, the highlight is U.S. removes malware allegedly planted on computers by Chinese-backed hackers. Twilt Typhoon is the group that is attributed with the attack. And this isn't a new remote access Trojan. This thing's been around since 2008. So anyone with even relatively up-to-date endpoint protection, this particular remote access Trojan should have been caught and killed. But that wasn't the case here. The operation was actually led and actually organized by French authorities. They found the command and control and actually identified the targets or the victims of Plug X in the United States and worked with the FBI. And the interesting part of the story is the FBI actually worked with the French authorities and and the command and control and injecting themselves in, removed the malware off of, I think it was roughly 4,200 computers. Yep, 4,200 computers automatically. So they actually went through and did the cleanup, which I've not seen the FBI do a malware cleanup without. It didn't say whether they actually notified the end user, but they said they were able to do it without actually collecting any system information or files from the remote host. So a really cool story in the sense that there was international cooperation, identified the victims, were able to actually get in the stream of the command and control and actually use that command and control infrastructure to remove the malware from the hosts. So I thought I'd start 2025 with a good story of law enforcement working together in a coordinated attack to remove malware from 4,200 systems of people that probably didn't know, may still not know if they ever had it.
Very good. Cooperation, international cooperation. That's going to come back a little bit later. You're going to see.
Do you have difficulty recruiting and retaining good IT resources? Is your focus on your core business and not on IT? You need ESI. Entrust your infrastructure to a partner focused on your IT, delivering solid services, improving security, reducing risks of failure, all while reducing your TCO. Find us at esitechnologies.com and click on Managed Services.
Excellent. Well, all right, a positive hot topic. Very good. Let's skip right on to the next one. This one is near and dear to my heart. I am guilty of enjoying a little bit of TikTok now and then. Yeah, unless you've been living in a cave, you probably heard that TikTok was banned for 20 minutes and then came back unbanned. Patrick, what's going on with the TikTok?
Well, I mean, we're going to be harping on Chinese on this subject. You could bet your life on it. And actually, I'm a bit disappointed at your intro because that's exactly how you introduced this topic, because it was a topic of our March 21st, 2023 talk.
Oh.
So I actually had to go back because it's not the first time. And you caught us by surprise by asking the question before the hot topics. You felt guilty from using TikTok and you asked for our opinion.
Yeah.
And clearly you didn't listen to our opinion because you say you're still using it.
Yeah, I disinstalled it for a couple of months and then I reinstalled.
Jason, we'll have to talk about that
at the next performance review
during his next review.
How else is he going to get his news?
Yeah.
Marco needs his news from somewhere.
That's right. That's right. How else am I going to know if the aliens are coming out of the ocean?
Since we're starting this with Revelations, I will show you guys this. I don't know if you could see it in thing.
Yeah. Oh, right there. What is it?
My dog is TikTok famous.
Is he?
Wait.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And he did that on his own, right?
Yeah, he did that on his own. He's got 40,000 followers.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
40,000 followers, my little corgi. So I do have to be full disclosure.
Yeah.
So
all this saga started when we all agreed on the fact that TikTok could be weaponized and was indeed opening back doors and taking, unsuspected, I say this lightly, unsuspected victims' identity and information for whatever use of the Chinese government. Now, we've established during this call and previous calls that there are bad people, state-sponsored, that are inserting themselves in critical infrastructure and applications. So why not TikTok, knowing that the PRC is present in all the large public Chinese organizations? So that's the first thing. So obviously, go back. it's funny because March 21st was when you first talked about it, Marco, in 2023. And there was a bipartisan bill in March 12, 2024, that was passed through the House of Representatives with a vote of 50-0 to ban TikTok.
Right.
Okay. And we know for a fact that it was recently confirmed by the Supreme Court of the United States, therefore enacting the ban. President Trump initially was against TikTok, but then reverted his position. And he was famously quoted back in the day, and I'm going to read it out. He said, if you get rid of TikTok, Facebook and Zuckerschmuck will double their business, which was the case because it was another social platform that competed with Facebook and X and whatnot. But it took the attention away from the fact that it was Chinese backed. Now, if we looked at what happened recently, so the ban was the Supreme Court still says, and they'll have to enforce within 90 days, change of ownership. What was discussed during the inauguration and right after is, number one, they were reinstated. Number two, there's talk of owning 50% of TikTok and not just changing control of TikTok. And this is from President Trump. The challenge with that is that if you still have 50% ownership by the Chinese, you're not putting anyone on the hook directly on what can and cannot be done with the platform. Whereas if you change total ownership to an American firm or under American responsibility, then you could work more clearly because there's accountability and we're respecting laws to make sure that the Chinese government, leaves or doesn't have any way to penetrate, if you will, or influence TikTok. What I find saddening in all this, and it goes the same with Canada, is that our laws are being used against us because a lot of people in the US during the process were opposing, making the ban unconstitutional on the grounds of not respecting the First Amendment versus national security concerns. Now, national security is not a card, and the Supreme Court has said that you could use in every single invoke all the time to get your agenda pushed through. But in this case, there's reasonable proof that the Chinese government is involved in Chinese organizations and are acting in a bad way in the US and in Western countries. But the irony of this is that they're invoking the First Amendment, and this is a country that there's no free speech, full censorship, yet they're using the First Amendment to push their agenda in the country. Same way in Canada, we have the Individual Charter of Rights. Well, there's a lot of groups in Canada, whether religious or from all sorts of different walks of life, that are always invoking, the Charter of Liberties and individual liberties to do whatever they want within our soil. So we have the same issues where we have foreign actors using our laws against us. So at what point do we make a decision together to say, when the national security interests and the interests of our 170 million TikTok users in the US surpass in specific cases with recognized foreign entities that are interfering and meddling with our livelihood, when do we make the decision to say enough is enough, right? And we're at that level. So I wasn't happy that the ban was lifted. I know the ban should be or will be eventually enforced. Under what shape or form, I do not know, because it's not even authorized in the US to have a 50% ownership. The maximum is 20% ownership from a foreign entity, if you will. So it still has to be played out. In the meantime, what's unfortunate is that, people themselves, at the end of the day, they're like on Facebook, they're free. They could put their personal information online and their addresses and their social insurance numbers. It's up to individual responsibility, but we still have to think of in the grand scheme of things, we also have to think about people that may not be as informed on what they do or what organizations do with their personal information. So that's why the government exists, and that's why there's certain rules and laws that need to be enforced. But I have to say, when you're willingly deploying applications that you may know or not know to be compromised, you also have a responsibility in that, of course. So it's a fine line, it's a balancing act, but I just don't appreciate us fighting against a known foreign entity that goes against every single law that we uphold dearly and using that against us. That's crazy. So a little geopolitical, cybersecurity, personal information rant, but it is what it is.
Yep.
Tom,
And I know what's weird, just before we get to you, Tom, the before and after the ban, the application, the stuff that you can see. Oh, there's some stuff that just magically disappeared. No more talking about the wildfires. No more talking about Luigi and the CEO. No more. Certain topics are not available anymore. Very, very, very weird.
Are you saying social media
it's
has
not the same.
censorships? Never.
It's weird how it is.
Never.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It is what it.
Yeah. But I guess I take a different view on this. My view is if you sign up to an application, a social media application, to participate in the social media explosion in whatever way you want to do that, to either express yourself, to commune with others, to learn, to join groups, to wait 16 hours a day, just looking for your dopamine hits and things of that nature. You choose to enter that world, and your privacy is dictated by the app that you get on. That's the bargain you make with it. It doesn't matter whoever owns that whether you're doing it on Meta platforms, whether I'm not an Instagram generation person. I was a Facebook generation person, and then I skipped over Instagram and went to TikTok. So,
I agree with that first principle.
But I think I will say one more thing. The question isn't to me that, because that is a bargain for exchange for people. I think the question is there an application, in this case TikTok, that is also collecting information on other applications that are on the device and other interactions that the user is doing?
They have, and it's been
and so for that, my answer is
deploy Appdome.
Yeah, well, it's not on the, I don't care what you deploy. Obviously, I'd prefer you would deploy Appdome, but there are technologies that exist for brands who care about user privacy, user safety, user data protection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who care about compliance, PCI compliance, GDPR compliance, HIPAA compliance, or whatever. There are technologies out there that allow you to safeguard your application and the data and the users in that application from tools and exploits like TikTok or other living off the land malware or whatever that are sitting on that device. It's not on your end user. It's on you as a brand. If you care about that, it's not a national problem. To me, it's a commercial problem. If my bank says, hey, you know what, Tom, when you sign into our application, we want you to have the same level of security as if you walk into my branch. Great. I love you. Thank you very much. I will be a very loyal customer of you. And believe me, I have more money with you than you will ever spend on me with Appdome. So you have the technical choice to defend my data on your back end, my data in your network, my data that's between your network and your application, and my data that's sitting in your application and all the processes, Face ID, fingerprint, whatever. You've got technologies that you can deploy to do that. If you choose to do it, great. If you don't do it, I hope you tell me so I can choose another bank. I think for me, it's really a technical question and a responsibility question. I mean, and just on the geopolitical thing, the talk right now is that, I think the last statement that President Trump made is, well, he'd be happy if Elon bought it. So, okay, well, to me, it's clearly not about who owns it or whatnot, or about the it's not about the national security risk. It's about who owns it and who has that control over that platform. So I think it really, from a cyber perspective, it's a question of how do we ensure users' data is safe from a nation state or any other application sitting on that device and grabbing that information. That's really the question. So either the operating system can step up and do it, which They're not, because that's not their job.
Not at all.
Or
Yep.
it's the other application providers who are going to have to say, hey, you know what? I don't want my app susceptible to that. And good news is
Tom,
locked in.
I have to interrupt you here. We got to move on to the next one. But don't be dismayed. You are the one that is up next to bat. So you spoke a little bit about AI earlier on your first hot topic and the challenges with the Face ID and all that stuff. But what about combating fraud? That's what you want to talk to us. Can we use AI? Can we use deep learning to combat
Yeah, I
fraud?
mean, there's a lot of articles out there about people wanting to use, deep learning and to combat fraud, whether it's, also deep learning in the Face ID world and so forth. I think right now, I wanted to talk about it just to give a cautionary pause to that, because I think before you get into whether deep learning or AI can defeat fraud, which let's agree it can, you need to ask yourself, do you have enough data to make it stick? Do you have enough, do you have a raw, universe of data that you can apply deep learning to create those models and create those predictions that are going to be meaningful, right? If I'm looking at a data set of 100 events and making predictions on that 100 events versus a billion events versus hundreds of billions of events and
Right.
trillions, I'm making very different predictions on those things. And so, it's no matter how great the mathematical model is, it comes down to how much data that you have. And so I did want to kind of throw that out there as something and I think there's a huge promise in using AI to defeat fraud. We just announced yesterday, I think it was, our own, models around this, because, we get, close to, I think it's almost 40 billion events a month. So just to give you a sense of scale. So at 40 billion events a month, we feel like the data set is large enough now to be able to use AI inside that data set to make predictions about whether your application is likely to be attacked and susceptible to a certain vulnerability. And we're starting to use deep learning to do that. But as we started to it took us a long time to get to that scale. Prior to that, when we used AI, test runs, the predictions were all over the place. So you really kind of need to have a very, very, very large data set. So kind of keep that in mind as you guys are thinking about, and evaluating and looking at solutions that claim to do this. Number one thing, tell me about your data set. Tell
That's
me
right.
where you're getting it from. Tell me how much you've got. Tell me how consistent it is. Tell me how long you've been training your model. If it's like, oh, I've been training my model for the last 3 months. Okay, that's not
Right.
is not going to be mature enough to start making those predictions. So
Well,
just
to your
kind of
point, with that large corpus of data, and what you talked about earlier with application protection and not being able to access data from other applications, how are you looking at guardrails for your AI modeling with the big corpus of data that you need?
well, that's the question, right? So you got to look at everything's got to be normalized, right? You can't just like
Right.
you got to look at it kind of on a curve. So you can't give AI like unfettered reign to make whatever. You definitely have to have mathematical. There has to be mathematical guardrails that say, okay, this has to all be normalized within the universe of the data set that you have. I think the really interesting thing around deep learning, at least that we found in our investigation, is what happens next, what
Right.
I call what happens next. It's not just first of all, what happens first, predict what the first attack is and by when. In other words, how many milliseconds will the first attack happen, and then what happens next based on whatever about the application, its distribution, where its users are, what kinds of devices they have, what kind of operating system, distribute all the relevant information about like your application. Tell me what's first, tell me what's next, and tell me how fast these things are going to grow. And so you get kind of this, when you run the models, you get kind of these fingers that just kind of go la, la, la,
That's
la,
right.
la, la,
Yeah.
that kind of show you a blossoming. It's almost like a fractal diagram that just kind of shows you like how things are moving, and you're like, whoa, like that's really cool. And so, I think in the next, you're going to see us in the next 30, 60, 90 days come out with a kind of a, I don't know, I call it the Doctor Strange time zone thing where you go, okay, I want to roll forward and I want to roll back. And I want to be able to see like
Ah,
how are these things moving? So I can say, okay, I can see that my application in the next 60 days is gonna face that. So I have the ability now to act and deploy something within a reasonable period of time and stop that before it happens. So back to what Jason was talking about, you get to this preemptive notion of like, hey, it's not the rate of this thing is changing. You need to be able to kind of go forward, go back, go forward, go back, and make some real judgments to get ahead of these things. Whack-a-mole, whack-a-mole is not enough. And I
Right.
think Patrick's point about TikTok, for everything he's right about, communist nations using our First Amendment rights to, kind of infiltrate our whatever, blah, 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 agree with. The question is, we get to this state where, okay, the app's already used by 200 million people. So,
Data's there.
yeah, the data's there. The exploit's happening. It's like right here. And now we're talking about it, right? So we can't be on the receiving end as cyber professionals much longer and survive. We're gonna have to kind of shift into
Yeah.
this rapid preemptive mode, and we'll have to sort of tell the organizations we might make some mistakes in picking, but we're a hell of a lot better than making mistakes for doing nothing and
Well, and
waiting
to
for.
that point, now you're starting to see with
you,
Gartner's next theme is we had GRC to kind of govern some of that. Now it's
Yep.
AI governance platforms specifically and what
yeah.
that's going to look like moving forward. So they're already looking at that, and we can just see whether the GRC companies move into more of just an AI governance platform or
Yep.
it spawns a new vertical.
Yep. I agree.
You heard it here first, folks. The Appdome is creating the Infinity Stone of Time in the next 30 to 90
I'm a geek.
days.
I'm a
So-
geek. Sorry.
Well, we had cyber power before.
Thank you very
Now
much.
we have
Thank
the
you.
infinity. So
Exactly.
Thank you very much for the hot topics, gentlemen. That was great. The show is quickly running away from us. We're going to move on to what I promised the audience at the very top of the show, which is our bold predictions. Before we get to those, last year's bold predictions, a quick little recap to see if we know what we're talking about, keep ourselves accountable. Patrick, you said ransomware will keep hurting medical institutions and patients. I think that Bill's topic, you were right on with that one. Bill, hackers will use generative AI and deepfakes to mess with the election in November. Anything about that, Tom? Did you hear anything about
Not
that?
hear
Yes,
anything
no?
about that. Sorry. Sorry. I can't say it didn't happen, but
They were on path to do that, but quite honestly, it was actually blocked by all the platforms. So I do think that if the platforms would not have blocked the content was created. In fact, I saw some pretty interesting
Yeah.
deep fakes that were more
Oh,
like on
all of
YouTube
them.
and other, yeah, but they never made it to the point where they actually interfered with elections or messed with the election.
Right, very good. And my prediction was that there was going to be not only an increase, but a very strong increase in AI enhanced cyber attacks. And it wasn't a very bold prediction. I'll just call it a prediction. I think that one came true. So pretty good, pretty good. We're batting pretty well, guys. Let's see now about the bold predictions. Let's look into the crystal ball, look ahead, and then we can discuss in 12 months if we were right or wrong. Bill, go ahead with yours.
All right.
And let's make it 30 seconds each, gentlemen, please.
This was a bold prediction. I predict that 2025 will be the death of the password. We talked about last year how hackers are no longer breaking into systems, they're logging in. This is also further enhanced by actually an internal vendor meeting we had with CrowdStrike, where they said the decline of malware is primarily because hackers don't have to do the work that they used to. So I do see that the password, at least by itself as an authentication method, will die. Maybe adding tokens and keys, biometrics, maybe not. Thanks, Tom. MFA, passwordless options. But I do think that the password as a standalone in most organizations will be dead by the end of 2025.
Wow. I have to say that was we're starting off strong. That's pretty bold. Very, very good. Jason, go ahead with yours.
Yes, I think we're going to see a very big jump in 2025 of AI. We've already been talking about it to date. We mentioned it last year. That's going to be ingrained into every area from professional to personal. That'll be the first one. A very big push on the identity side of the house as leading the way for risk mitigation. And then you have the quantum side of the house. So you're going to see an increase in quantum, and then you're going to see an increase on how do we actually protect the crypto algorithms from quantum. And last but not least, I definitely see a personal portable microwave that be able to carry around. So
Developed by
Yes.
Appdome as well. All right, very good. Okay, that was actually more than
That's
one
fine.
prediction.
it's
Jason.
all
You're
combined.
on fire.
Don't worry. It's a la carte now.
Okay,
Plethora.
very good.
I'm with you for
Jason,
the need of a personal portable microwave. I think that would be awesome.
and Jason, before that microwave exists, I can get you the tinfoil hat tomorrow. So
Yes,
we're in good
yes,
shape.
please.
Don't worry.
Patrick, go ahead. You with
It'll
your
be the
bold
year
prediction.
of overt state-sponsored attacks to critical infrastructure. We will see damage. We've already started seeing that at a physical level, with the Russians severing the internet cables between Finland and Germany. They were caught yesterday. They were shadowed by a warship in the UK, scanning undersea cables off the coast of the UK. I think that's a relatively easy prediction. What I think will happen will be watershed moment with the current administration and the Western allies being tired with all this sabotage. We will probably see public retaliation. Finally, see public retaliation on a cyber counterattack from the Western countries to some of these countries to inflict damage that will be public and known. As they make theirs public and known. So I think this administration was set an example and raised the bar.
Harsh.
Wow.
Very contentious.
Wow.
All right. And last but not least, Tom, you have one heck of a
It's gonna be
of a
hard to
prediction
follow
as
that
well.
one. Yeah, mine's gonna be boring. Last when I got on the show last time, you guys kind of caught me off guard and said, "Tom, what do you think is gonna happen with the zero trust? Do you think it's the end of zero trust?" And at the time I was like, I don't know. And we all kind of laughed. I think I want to throw that in for this year. I think we're gonna see the end of zero trust, or the start of the end of zero trust in 2025. I just think the capabilities of the modern, device ecosystem are just getting way too interesting to use and to consume and to be productive and to, do our work, etc. So I don't think it's going to be and at least what I'm seeing in the Face ID, facial recognition, geolocation world as well, is that there's just so much technology sitting on your device right now. And if we can kind of safeguard the way those devices collect that data so that businesses and enterprises can rely on it, I think we're gonna really shift the model to something that's a lot more trust based as opposed to zero trust based. So
Well,
I think the world's just going to shift
it,
on that.
it goes hand in hand with Bill's prediction, in my opinion, right? If you're passwordless,
Yep.
we redefine the zero trust architectures.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and I'll just a little insight into the world of mobile. One of the top requests of 2025 to date is an immutable device ID.
Mutable device ID.
Yeah. So in other words, right now, if you're a fraudster or a bot or whatever, and you obfuscate or not be avoid detection, every device has a series of device identifiers which are easily, you can
Cloned.
spoof,
You
change them,
falsify,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah. So we can all, if we all want to look like we're Patrick's phone, we can all just, change everything to Patrick's ID, and it'll look like Patrick's everywhere, and doing this thing, and basically kind of hide our true nature and identity. So what our customers are looking for is, when someone installs my app, can you, Appdome, calculate a immutable device ID for that particular installation, and so that we can use that for identification purposes.
Would blockchain come into play for that, Tom? What would your approach be? Would blockchain be used for that?
I don't want to reveal what our methods are yet until we've got the patent filed, but we've got some very interesting technology that we're going to provide. But I do think it goes along with what Bill's talking about. It goes along with the challenges again that when you're fighting a war, a cyber war, you got to have your rear guard defensive action, and you've got to be able to change tactics. You've got to be able, and I think also with when you think about just the rise of AI agents on devices, you're not going to be using your face to authenticate anyway, because the AI agent's going to log in for you and do all this work.
Mm.
So you're going to have to rely on a digital authentication mechanism that's not a biometric authentication mechanism. So we're preparing the mobile world for that future right now. I don't think we're there. We're starting baby steps with immutable device ID. So I think that's kind of where we're going. But I definitely think the predictions that you guys are making are kind of straight on. But we're moving the technical goalpost out a bit while AI is taking advantage and exploiting this. We're going to block the means of delivery and then change the game.
Nice.
And I think that's going to be
Very
awesome.
good.
Looking
Very
forward
good.
to
Very
that.
good.
All right, cool.
My prediction is that Tom's Corgi's TikTok account will make sufficient money for Tom to retire.
Yeah, my corgi content will definitely not be the type of content that is no longer seen on any social media platform.
Very good, gentlemen. Very good. Your predictions are entered in the Behind the Shield vault, and we will revisit them in about 12 months' time. We are running out of show. I want to thank our panelists, Patrick Nome, Bill Stroob, Jason Williams, for all the hot topics. We had we're starting our third year, gentlemen. So this is pretty fun stuff.
Well, congratulations to all of you. I think you guys have an amazing platform here, an amazing show. I love the fact that all four of you get on the phone and share your perspectives. Shows the depth of security expertise and knowledge. I mean, we went all the way from nation state all the way down into the code level and everywhere in between, policies and extended threats management, everything. I've never been on a show like this from a partner like you guys that has the technical chops and security background to cover all of that. So just congratulations in your third year.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
And this is the second time, but if you keep giving us some compliments like that, we'll surely invite you again for sure. Thank you very much to Jackie at Master Control, doing controlling everything to make everything run smoothly, and so we look so much smarter than we are. And Tom, of course, your participation today was great. Thank you very much. If you've missed any part of today's show, the show will be made available sometime next week. Remember that you can find us wherever quality podcasts are shared. A big thank you also to our listeners. So I mentioned this is our third year starting. So without your support, without your downloads, your sharing of our podcast, we probably wouldn't have made it so far. So I hope you'll stick around with us for this third year. I promise you lots of guests and lots of fun. Until next time, remember, when you're behind the shield, you're ahead of the game. See you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.